Okay, everybody, please give us about 5 minutes to give more people a little time to join. We'll start in 5 minutes. So that will be at 10, I'll just say 10:09. Let me monitor the participants. All right, so just want to see if all of our panelists are here. Okay, Brian, welcome. Councilman Corey, welcome. Councilman Gumbs, welcome.
You know what,
Councilman
Mr.
Sir, good morning.
Good morning. I'm sorry.
Mr. Driscoll.
Yes, sir.
Driscoll.
Yes, sir.
You know what? I do apologize. The link that you sent out, I that's the link that I shared. So what is the one for the participants?
You want me to just send it to you in chat? I'll send it to you all in chat.
If you don't mind sending that to me, so you might see another person pop up as myself or whatever. But did you log on, Sandra?
Yeah, there's somebody else on there as you. Yeah, there's two of them.
Right. So that's human error. That's me.
Okay.
That's me.
So
please email me the link, so I can share with the proper link with the people. That's my fault.
Okay. So let me see if I can pull it up without having to log in, because I don't want to get distracted. It's been widely distributed. If you go to any of the groups that are connected with South Fulton, I just posted the attendee link there. Okay. Yeah.
Councilman Reeves is also on the flyer.
Yep. That's for registration and to attend. But I just check that group real quick. I think we should go ahead and get started because this is being recorded. And so anybody who missed essential portions of it, we can have them view the recording. Let's see, Corey. All right, so we're waiting on the mayor. Councilwoman Gumbs, do you mind kicking off the greetings? Welcoming everybody.
Sure, no problem.
All right, and we'll go by district.
Okay.
We're recording.
All right, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the South Fulton County Virtual HOA Boot Camp. I am Councilwoman Gumbs, and I am happy to be here today. I think this is a very important opportunity for our residents to really get to know what the HOA can do and what they cannot do, and how we can all work together as local government. So I am very honored to be here today, along with my colleagues that you'll hear from in a few minutes, to really support what you all have going on with the Georgia HOA Alliance. So thank you for having me, and I'm looking forward to learning more information, just as well as sharing some great tips and ideas of how we can all work together as a community.
Good morning, community. My name is Councilwoman Helen Willis, and I represent District 3, City of Fulton. Thank you all for engaging and joining us for this South Fulton Virtual HOA Boot Camp. And I want to thank the two organizers of this, and that's Commissioner Arrington and Correll Driscoll, who these two individuals have always been active in our community. And of course, Commissioner Arrington is the commissioner for the district that I live in. This topic is very personal for me. One, because we have, in my community, Creekside, we just took over our HOA from our declarant. So there's a lot of things that we need to learn. And two, I did speak on behalf of this topic last year at General Assembly, and House Representative William Bodie introduced legislation to, regulate and mandate how HOA should function, and also what should happen when they are turned over. And of course, many builders did not support that legislation, and it is still in one of the committees. And I'm hoping that he will press forward with bringing this legislation through the process. Thank you so much. I won't go into that because I'm pretty sure that will be touched on in this training, but I am looking forward to you all bringing the information, much needed information to the community. Thank you.
Hello?
Yeah, Councilmember Reeves, will you go next, please, followed
Yeah,
by
we can hear you.
Councilmember Baker?
Okay. Absolutely. Listen here, this is Corey A. Reeves, and I just want to say I think every HOA and how to take control of their HOA and their own community. I started some great participation, and this event right here is HOA Boot Camp, which has been going on for a couple of years now. And I think it's very important and pertinent information on how that you can make your communities better, and how that we here as your local government is here to be able to assist you in any area, and to know that you get back locally and want to see the improvements, and here to help you with anything that we can assist you with. And you are grand ambassadors and leading the charge. And we thank you for that. And I look forward to hearing this great information. And I look forward to y'all
Councilman Reeves, you're going in and out. So I think you
on
there you go.
and how to improve your. I'm sorry.
Okay, Commissioner Arrington, you'll be up
Councilmember
next.
Baker. We got Councilmember Baker next.
Oh, okay. There he is. He's on.
Hello.
Hey,
You guys hear me?
Councilmember Baker.
Thank
Yes,
you. I would like to say thank you and good morning. My name is Councilmember Mark Baker. I am the District 7 council person for the city of South Fulton. And I represent District 7 and the subdivisions from Autumn Lakes, Autumn Bluff, where I am right now, getting ready to start a block party, and Oakley Township, and several other HOA communities that are very, very strong. And I just want to say thank you guys, Commissioner Arrington and Brother Carell Driscoll, for allowing me to be a part and allowing me to assist in amplifying such an event that really caters towards the people who are on the front line in our community as community leaders, because they have everything that all of the real issues come to them before they even accelerate to the city of South Fulton Council. So I appreciate everybody who's tuned in today. I appreciate those HOA members who are probably tuned in, who are joining me and Mr. Reeves just a second ago over on Old National with the cleanup. So I just want to say thank you to the diligent leaders, community leaders in the city of South Fulton who are dedicated to making it better, and as well as role models, Carell Driscoll and Marvin Arrington, for putting something like this together so people can know what resources are available to them in their community and how to properly exercise their rights and making their communities greater. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Councilmember Baker. My name is Marvin Arrington, and I, along with Carell Driscoll, and one of the co-founders of the HOA Alliance, is very special today because the HOA Alliance started right here in the city of South Fulton. It started in our subdivision. We were having trouble with transition to the homeowners with the declarant, and we did not have the answers in our subdivision, but we found the answers on Nextdoor. We went to Nextdoor with our problems, and Mason White responded. There's a transition ordinance that Fulton County has passed. And so we found that the problem was that neighbors weren't talking across subdivision lines. And so we founded the HOA Alliance to help neighbors help themselves. So I'm very glad to be here today. Thankful to be with you all. I did see a note that some of the attendees were just logged in. We're just getting started, so you haven't missed much of anything. But you did miss, I guess, just briefly, introductions from Councilwoman Gumbs and introductions from Councilmember Helen Willis, as well as Councilmember Corey Reeves and Councilmember Mark Baker. We are looking, I believe, for Mayor Edwards to join us at some point, so we'll allow him to come in and make his introduction at that time. I'll hand it over to Mr. Driscoll now.
Well, again, I won't regurgitate what we've already heard so far. Welcome to the South Fulton County Virtual HOA Boot Camp. I did have a couple of things I wanted to make sure we touch on. We get a lot of questions in reference to HOA residents' experience, board members seeking advice. We've created the HOA Alliance Help Desk at the very bottom. And by the way, we'll provide you with a copy of any slides that we present as a Adobe PDF. You'll have the URL to navigate to the help desk, open the ticket, submit your request, have it tracked, and keep us on task. We also have created what we call the HOA handbook. We've tried different price levels for this handbook. We're going to update it. You can find it if you are into the Kindle edition. It is now on Kindle, but you can also navigate to our website, download the PDF. You'll have the PDF and you can email it to your Kindle and make it available there too. So we're going to just get past, Bill Edwards, Mayor Bill Edwards' presentation. Whenever he comes, we'll stop and let him take care of it. And so we're going to jump in when we talk about what everyone needs to know about transition. And so on that panel is myself and I'll use, because he plays many roles, attorney Marvin Arrington. So we want to talk about transition of a community. And so we're going to go ahead and make that shift. So based on the agenda, we want to define what's a community association, what exactly is a transition. We want to talk about what is the difference between a declarant appointed board as opposed to a community elected board. So we're going to touch on some of these things here. So we're going to go ahead and jump into transition of a community. All right, so let me get to that PowerPoint. And can someone let me know if you see transition of a community here? Everybody see what I'm sharing, correct? Yes? All right, so what is a transition? Yes.
Correct.
Yes, can you hear me?
Mayor Edwards is on. Let's see if we can track it down. For some reason, we are not able to hear him. He may be on as an attendee. We might need to promote him to a
I'm looking
panelist.
now. I'm looking in the attendee. I just did a search for his name. Let me see if he made it to the panelists. Williams. I'm looking through. Can you look through the list?
I'm looking through it. I don't see it. I may just need to send him another updated link.
Okay. I think I had that open. I can go ahead and send it.
Okay, perfect.
And we'll jump back on the order of the agenda. Yeah, I got to log in.
He might be Zoom user.
Oh, okay. Then we'll promote him.
Mayor Edwards, are you there?
Okay, I see Zoom user. So I am going to promote him to a panelist to see exactly who that is. So, Mayor, if you're on, I think I promoted the right one. If you're coming across as Zoom user, please speak up. All right, I don't see him.
He's
All
on
right, I
mute.
just got a couple of phone numbers talk. Mayor Edwards, are you there?
Yeah, what is his last 3 digits? Is he chatting with
No,
somebody?
I put both of them on allow to talk.
Okay.
All right, if you will, just send him an updated link because.
Okay.
Can you hear
All
me?
right. Oh,
Yes.
yes.
There we go.
All right.
All right, so let's
Are
get
you
back
there?
to the agenda. Yes, sir, we are. Do you want to go ahead and bring greetings? And then we'll,
Absolutely.
okay.
Absolutely. Once again, thank you all so much for the invitation to speak to this group. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you, Marvin Arrington and Carrell Driscoll, for all that you do to try to bring understanding and cooperation between factions of the community that needs to be done. For this 10 minutes or so I'm here, I know, Mr. Driscoll, you asked me to talk about diversity and economic development, and I'm glad that you chose that topic for me. You know, economic development in terms of our government is very important and very essential. However, to understand how economic development plays into the vitality of what we're doing is special. People have defined economic development in many, many ways. And to tell you the truth, all of the definitions interplay with each other and have merit. The thing about economic development is, I want people to understand, in a city like ours, if we're less than 4 years old, that it is the backbone of our ability to perform those tasks such as infrastructure and other things that is so well needed in our community. And some of them equate that as just being service. When you look at economic development, I think of 2 things. One is public safety, and one is education. Now, you notice I didn't say anything about a building. I didn't say anything about warehouses or residential or anything. Public service and education. And let me tell you why I say that. In public service, which is the top priority for our city, one of the top priorities for our city, we want to make sure that we have the essential things that we need to make sure our fire and police are number one, not only in our city, but in our region. And we have done that. We have brought in new equipment. We have brought in more officers. Our crime rate is down by 17%. We just purchased recently 2 tanker trucks and a ladder truck, and we're looking to purchase another new piece of equipment for the fire department this year. We've gone through extensive training in public safety, especially in terms of our fire department, with everything that's going along, our police department rather, with everything that's going on with police officers and people liking or disliking them. I can say to you today that our training has helped us along because we've never had any incidences of police brutality or anything of that nature in our city. And I take my hat off to Chief Meadows and those in the police department who have done that. So we're pushing very forward in terms of economic development, in terms of our police department. The other portion of it is our education. You know that the school board is a separate entity as it pertains to education. But you know, we all pay when we look at our tax bills. There's a portion that says Fulton County Schools. We all pay taxes to Fulton County Schools. To make it even clearer for you, if you look at the $1 that you pay in tax, 53 cents of that $1 goes to Fulton County Schools. Some of our schools are doing tremendously well, doing very well. you know, especially in terms of Westlake. This year had every person, all 500 of their graduates, were admitted to college, were accepted to college, whether they want or not. I think that's pivotal as we change the paradigm, as we change the conversation as it pertains to education. That it's okay to put our children in public education, that's our choice, and they still can get the type of education that they want. Not knocking private schools, because we have them here, or not knocking charter schools, or we're in a charter school situation with our school board. But I think it's pivotal that, you know, we pay close attention and get involved as community people with our educational system. Now, you're probably saying, Bill, you're up there talking about police and education. And you sort of telling me about economic development. Well, let me tie it in for you. No one wants to come and live where, number one, they don't feel safe, and number two, their child can't be educated. When you go to websites all over the country as it pertains to people relocating, or they're looking at certain cities or vicinities or some certain households, you'll also find that there's a meter right beside that website that talks about the educational level. They'll talk about crime. Those are two factors they're going to, no Fortune 500 company is going to place their buildings here, their operations here, but they can't get those two factors. And I mean, it's just as simple as that. I want to acknowledge Mr. Christopher Pike, who is our Economic Development Director, who I think is doing a fantastic job in strategizing and giving us the vision and mapping out our way to get us to where we want to. So that's my position. We hark on those things, and you as citizens play a great part in promoting the vitality of our police department and the vitality of our, when I keep saying police, I mean public safety, the vitality of our public safety and the vitality of our educational system. And I would say to you, continue to be a part, continue to express your ideas, your visions, so that we can promote those two things along. Lastly, let me talk about diversity. You know, I've taken a lot of diversity classes, and diversity I think plays a pivotal part in economic development. But let me make something very clear. Diversity doesn't always mean that everybody in my community looks like me. It really doesn't. Some people will tell you that if you don't have a fusion of different kinds of people in your community, then you won't get the type of economic development that you want. And to some degree, I believe that. But diversity is not just a black or white thing. The better word to use in terms of outside of diversity, the most appropriate word that you can use is inclusion. Inclusion. Because remember this, you can be all white city and all black city, and that is fine. But you know, you can be a city of one gender or whatever the case may be, or one race. But if you don't include your own race, then you're not gonna get the things you want. So diversity is a word that's widely used, but I think in terms of that, you may want to use the word inclusion so that it brings a better connotation and it doesn't offend anybody, and allows other people to come in and partake of the great communities that we have in this city. So that's kind of an overall view, Mr. Arrington and Mr. Driscoll. Just basic bottom line is how I feel, and in our city, those things that need to be done to push us where we are. So thank you for having me, and I truly believe that City of South Fulton is the place you need to be. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Mayor Edwards. Always a pleasure having you on board. And I'll turn it back over to Mr. Driscoll.
All right, so just want to make sure my microphone is operational as expected.
I see we do have 2 hands raised.
Oh, yeah.
Rick or Deidre Bell, do you have questions for the mayor? If so, can you please type them in?
And in the question and answer dialogue, and Mayor, if you want to, you can respond there. And then at the closure where we have dedicated question and answer time, you can respond to it verbally if you want to.
Okay, Mr. Driscoll.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Driscoll, I may have to jump off for a minute because I have some other obligations.
Yes, sir.
But I would love to hear. I would love to hear those questions so I can appropriately answer them.
If you want, we can do it now.
Here's one from Tanya Buford Vernon. What plans exist to attract businesses such as restaurants and entertainment to South Fulton outside of Camp Creek Marketplace? Options to shop would keep funds within the city and help residents so they don't have to travel to other counties to have access to stores, restaurants, and entertainment.
I think that that's a very good question, and thank you for that question. I think a couple of things. Number one, some of our commercial areas have not blossomed into what we have anticipated. And one of the reasons why is what I call the saturation of businesses of like kind in a particular area. What we're doing now is that we're going into those communities, and it's been challenging. We're going to be putting in ordinances that prevent things that may have happened in the past from happening in the future. I think that family-oriented, white tablecloth restaurants are what we need. And I understand, like other people understand, that we do have the financial propensity to pay for those types of things. So our Economic Development Director, Mr. Pike, we have gone out to look at those things. We also have what we call nodes that we are addressing. We've got a new downtown development authority for the city. The development authority itself is here for the city. So once we pooled all those resources together, and it's a matter of getting away from the old adage that, you know, a nightclub is what we want, and getting to the point where family restaurants, dining, and shops is what we want. And let me conclude by saying this. Once you get them, you got to respect them. Once you get them and they do not do what you want them to do, you're going to have to make that known, and that particular entity is going to have to improve. So a lot of times we get things, or we got such a shop, and I remind you, you remember how the marketplace used to look, Barnes and Noble and things of that nature? And those places are now being replaced with hair salons and places like that. Not saying that they're not good businesses. Don't even think that. But they were replaced. But why were they replaced? Because obviously we did not patronize the way we should. But we're looking to bring back more high-end companies, more high-end restaurants. We got a white tablecloth restaurant going up now, and believe it or not, on National Highway. So we're going to be continuously moving in that direction. And if those businesses who have not done well in our community, we thank you, but we need to move you out.
All right, Mayor Edwards, DJ Verge. Mayor Edwards, why does the police department take so long to handle HOA problems addressed to them? Do they consider HOA problems low priority cases? We may answer a little bit of that later. Certainly, we'll give you a chance to answer. Some issues are HOA issues and have nothing to do with the police.
Well, we addressed that in our presentation with code enforcement. Let
me add one thing to that too, because I know you have Mr. Driscoll and Mr. Arrington. people have to understand that police work on priority. And I know that's a word that people can't ingest sometimes. But I often hear, well, we called the police and they didn't get there an hour later. Or I hear, I called the police and they didn't come at all. And from my investigations, because one thing about it, when you dial 911, there is a dispatch record. And I always tell people, give me the date that you called and an approximate time. And I always go back and look at those and look at the record. And here's what I found. First of all, the fact that the police didn't come at all, that's never going to happen. What happens is sometimes that you will, as a citizen, call the police, and you will tell them something about an incident happening 5 houses down from you, but you don't want nobody to know that you said anything. So you don't want the police coming to your house. So what happens is the police go directly to where you sent them, and you never saw them. But they took care of the problem, and you subsequently say he didn't come at all. All right? Another example. We all must do what we can say. Listen, I can put a police officer in everybody's driveway. That's no problem. The question would be, are you willing to pay for it? I don't think you are. So what we have to do is that our police department works on a system, a priority system. Let me give you an example of that. If someone broke in your house, you're hurt, your stuff is gone, you feel violated, all of that stuff. And you're in the middle of your house, in the middle of the floor, on the phone with a dispatcher. Once you are there with that dispatcher, he or she derives the fact that you're safe, the predator is gone, and now we need to come out and take a look and write a report or whatever the case may be. To you, it's a priority. We may get on the way to you, someone may have had a shooting where guns were fired. We deviated, went to the shooting because that was more priority because of the fact that we actually talk about weapons fired and lives. Here we come to you. So guys, these are the things that we're always going to show up. But understand, what may be an emergency to reach the top of your emergency list, we're not saying it doesn't hit ours, but there are priorities 1, 2, and 3 in the police department. But we are coming.
All right, we
Thank
got
you,
two
man.
more questions for you, Edwards, before we let you go. Mashantria Austin, will additional signage be added to Derrick Road for the Amazon warehouse, and will an additional road be created off South Fulton Parkway for the Amazon warehouse? And will the light on Derrick Road be programmed now for an advanced green instead of the flashing yellow light?
Thank you for that question. That's very good. I think one of the things that we also need to know, and Mr. Arrington, you know this, people have to identify these roads and whose responsibility they are. Derrick Road, a large portion of Derrick Road is Union City. The portion that you speak of today, ma'am, is in Union City. That's the best way, the best governmental entity to talk to about that. And I understand that Union City is putting up a lot of warehouses. Do I agree with that? No, I do not. But that is the way that they do their government. I respect their government officials, but it's infringing upon the quality of life that we want, that we have in South Fulton. But the Parkway is the GDOT issue. But I am a part of a committee with in transportation that we're now looking at better ways for people to be served on the Parkway, and even to the point of looking at parallel lanes on outside of the Parkway to help. But I agree with you, the influx of these trucks going to have on our quality of life and on our and to upgrade our environmental issue is going to be traumatic. And my hope is that we can work with Union City and we work with other cities so that in the future we can respect each other's boundaries.
And hopefully, Mayor, you know, that's where maybe I can try to come in and help from a county standpoint, you know, if there are funds needed and maybe Union City doesn't have it or want to put it up, maybe there's a way Fulton County can come in and help with those issues, especially when you're, you know, right on those city borderlines, you know?
Right, and that's wonderful, because I think that's what people expect out of us, Mr. Arrington. I think they expect us to work together as a government to prescribe, because we always get. It's easy for me to say, "Well, that ain't my area." All right, it's easy for me to say that, but when it affects the people who live in my area, I think that's where the efforts in cooperation, county, city, state, to make sure that we have a smooth transition and we don't impede upon people's quality of life.
Yes, sir. All right, we've got one more for you, Mayor, before we let you go. This is from Lawrence Smith. Are there any plans to attract technology-based companies / offices to South Fulton to create some technology centers like downtown Atlanta or Alpharetta?
So, let me say this. A lot of these questions are having to do with the commercial side and the office side of what we do. Let me make it clear that we understand that the only way that we're going to relieve the tax burden on residential areas is that we bring in more commercial. So that's just a number one priority. We need more office. You know, we're 25 minutes from one of the world's busiest airports. We have interstate and we have rail. Those are three things that people who put those kinds of businesses in together look for. They look at your demographics, which includes your income. And I always tell the story too, how code enforcement, I know y'all have them on here, they play a very big role. How people would come into our city and they would buy land and they would, and everybody does this. They travel 5 miles, Marvin, you know this. They travel 5 miles around the area in which they selected to look at the community. When they do that, and they come into communities where you have grass not cut, cars in the driveway jacked up, bars on windows, it changes their whole perspective. Even though the land is good, even though they're 20 minutes from the airport, it changes their whole perspective of what they want to do. And so the homeowners and stuff, you know, this is why associations, the homeowners associations can help by making sure that all of our communities are looking good, are looking stable, so that we can get more of the technology. For us to be a smart city, for us to be what we call a smart city, to answer her question, we're going to have to bring in more technology companies. And we have people in our city who are able to demand these technology jobs. So yes, we are looking at that. That's part of our economic development strategy, and we're pushing forward on it.
All right. Thank you, Mayor Edwards. I think we got those answered.
Yes.
Yeah, we answered really most of the
Okay,
questions
well,
on the one. I'm sorry.
Well, Coretta, Marvin, thank you all so much. I really appreciate the opportunity of being here. I see we got some more South Fulton people on here that I know is going to do a good job. But once again, my thing is always, let's make the city of South Fulton better, because the city of South Fulton, it really is the place you need to be.
I have to agree now, Mayor.
Thank you all so much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Edwards. I see we also have Representative Roger Bruce on. Just let Roger, I just promoted you to a panelist. So if you want to bring greetings and say hello, we certainly would love to give you that opportunity at this moment.
Is he muted? Might have to unmute him. But I see him do so many Zoom.
Yeah, he may
events.
be away. He may be away from his
Okay.
phone.
All right. Okay. So do you want to take this time to answer the question about reasonable attorney fees? And then we'll go ahead and dive into what everyone needs to know about an HOA transition.
Okay, perfect. The word reasonable attorney's fees is something that I fight over in court every day. I've got an HOA situation now where a young lady was out of work for 2 years. She owed the HOA $21,000. She offered to pay them $15,000. They did not accept that amount. And the amount of money that she now owes 4 years later is $108,000 to her HOA. Most of that is attorney's fees. She filed bankruptcy twice. She went through, we actually I was able to get the lawsuit that had a judgment against her. I was able to get that judgment set aside because they did not serve her properly. And so there's been a lot of back and forth, but in the meanwhile, her $21,000 bill has increased to $108,000. Reasonable attorney's fees is what is reasonable in the minds of the 12 jurors that you would likely be in front of if you go in front of a jury. It is typically an attorney will testify in court as to the reasonableness of their hourly rate and as to the amount of time that they had to spend on the case. So typically attorneys are paid by the hour, and as a result, they will basically say, hey, this is how many hours I worked on the case, and this is my hourly rate. I've been practicing for 24 years as an attorney, and go from there. Now, the Court of Appeals, and it's kind of a different matter, but the Court of Appeals has ruled $25 a day is a reasonable fine amount. But that does not really address the attorney's fees. But reasonable attorney's fees is what happens when you deal with the reasonableness of the time, the amount of time expended, and the hourly rate charged by the attorney fee. And that amount is determined by the enlightened conscience of a jury of your peers.
Thanks for taking some time to answer these questions. What we're going to do is try to get back close to the agenda. So we're going to finish our discussion about the HOA transition, what everyone needs to know, okay? So let me go ahead and share that PowerPoint slide. Commissioner, you want to go ahead and define what is a transition?
Okay, so transition, HOA transition is when the declarant
Board
transfers community to the homeowners. And so you go from a declarant controlled board to a homeowner elected board. And when you have your homeowner elected board, you are no longer a declarant controlled community. The homeowners own the community, and the board members that have been elected by the homeowners are able to make decisions on behalf of that, on behalf of the association. Now, most community associations, in fact, 99%, at least in the state of Georgia, are first and foremost nonprofit corporations. That is, first and foremost, they are a nonprofit corporation. And so the bylaws will reflect the laws that are consistent with other Georgia nonprofit corporations. The Declaration of Protective Covenants is the document that controls or imposes use restrictions on the land that is covered by the Declaration of Protective Covenants. And so typically when you buy into a subdivision, you are buying into an association where typically you will have to pay annual or monthly dues, and typically membership is mandatory. But when you talk about transition, it's all about who's in control. You know, we were able in our subdivision in 6 months to save $100,000 and put it in a reserve account because we came in and cut the $2,500 a month management fee out. We cut the
Legal fees.
$5,000 a month attorney's fees out.
Mhm.
I mean, they sued an old neighbor that had filed bankruptcy for $2,000, and they had only collected $70, but we had paid over $5,000 in attorney's fees. It just simply didn't make sense. So we were able to cut a lot of expenses. We were able to get a $45,000 landscape contract down to $15,000. I think, you know, some of these people were paying the John Whelan rates instead of more competitive or market-driven rate, particularly in the city of South Fulton.
Yes, and so if I may add some value, what we want all residents, all homeowners to know is that the transition of power, and that's what I like to sum it up as, really requires any individual that plans to be on the board of directors, that means they want to run for the seat, to understand this process. We're moving from the control of the declarant, who has the power to appoint board members, versus we're moving over to homeowner residents who are elected. And what, based on my experience and seeing these different types of elections, including within my community, people elect others based on popularity. It's much more than that. And so transitioning can put your community in a great state, or you could be left in a very bad state. And so I was just having a conversation with Councilman Reeves about, you know, some communities that are left holding the bag, if I may, for the cost of cleaning out those retention and detention ponds. Some homeowners' yards became wetlands, more of wetlands, after they cleaned out that system. So we have to be very diligent about serving the people in our communities, right? So attorney Marvin Arrington has explained what that process is. And so we're just going to go ahead and move forward here. So when we talk about transition, it includes the physical common areas that are owned by the residents of the community. You pay for all services, you pay for all maintenance, all of those things come out of the dues that are actually collected. So it's not just down to managing and operating the community, but it's the acceptance of the common properties. And guess what? If you're joining that board, you need to know what are the common areas. And so ideally, in a perfect world, the best practice is to start the transitioning years before it actually happens. That's the best practice. But what we've seen lately, I'll get a call, say, hey, we're about to take over our community. We're electing board members next week. That puts your community at a disadvantage, and we would like to avoid that, right? So that's what I just spoke to. It's a multi-stage process. Generally, you might see an advisory committee that gets elected. They represent the community, or they're supposed to. I've seen instances where that advisory committee becomes all comfortable with the management company. And so they only take what the management company want to pass to the members or the homeowners, but they don't take your concerns and pass it to the management company, and the declarant. My advice, vote them off. Don't allow them to hijack every election for the advisory committee, even before you vote for your board of directors. That includes, can you hear me?
Let me add some value there.
Okay.
That point cannot be underscored enough. The new homeowner board, you are in charge, not the
Yes.
management company,
Yes.
not the attorneys. You are in charge and you can tell them what to do. They may not be neighborly because they're trying to run up their bills, but you can be a lot more neighborly than those people that don't live in your community. So remember, the homeowner board is in charge, and you tell the management company what to do, and you tell the attorneys what to do, not the other way around. You are in charge. You are their boss. That point cannot be underscored enough.
They are your advisors. You make the final decision. It is totally up to you. And I've served on the board. I mean, it was pretty enlightening experience. I learned quite a bit, but don't allow that management company, that attorney, or anyone to hijack your role as a leader. They can talk to you, you'll listen. They can try to tell you what to do, you'll listen, but always get them involved. All right, thanks. I'm just going to refer to you as Marvin, if you don't mind. All right, any collection of fines and fees is totally up to the new board of directors, right? So honestly, you can delegate responsibility, but you can't delegate accountability. And so that's what we see in a lot of traditional communities. They go out and hire a management company. That management company may be hired to collect the dues, identify violations, but as residents, as homeowners living in a community, if you look at your declarant and you read it closely, the members and the homeowners are charged with enforcement. So if you see something out of place, you are required to report it. Now, some people would call it snitching. All right, just think about it closely. This could be a way to just engage your neighbor and just bring it to their attention because they may not be aware of the declaration, the community restrictions, or even the bylaws that speaks to the operation of the community. You can give it a try. I mean, it's up to you, or you may want the board of directors to take care of it. But know that as a board of director member, as an officer of the board, you are required to follow the declaration, right? There's room for, the board of directors to come up with ways to engage where you don't feel like you're in danger. My point is, if you become a member of that board, you're required as a body to operate and maintain your community. And so collection of fines and fees, just based on my personal experience, is the most difficult area for a person that lives next door or within the community with your neighbor. But it has to be done. And that's why it's okay to hire a management company to just do those things. You don't have to do everything that a management company offers. Just based on our experience, we had the transition take place with the board, right? We had 3 members, and believe it or not, that transition helped educate us all on working with a community association. And that's some experience. But remember, after that transition, you have to look at that association, not as, oh, this is a new association. No, your association is registered as a business with the Secretary of State. All you've done in this case is change leadership. So if you have some litigation that was going on when the declarant board was appointed, guess what? You may, if they don't have that issue resolved before you take the seat, guess what you have to manage? The litigation. And it's your decision. You can outsource that to again, management company could take it, or you can outsource it to an attorney firm that you hire. Again, my point is, make sure you vet everyone you hire. You want to talk to their referrals, etc. Anybody who would give you the honest scope about their business. Don't just talk to who they recommend. Try to find out about other company or other HOAs that they've managed. You got to stay on top of this, because now you're in a fiduciary duty, and I'm quite sure, Marvin, you want to explain exactly what that means.
Okay, thank you. So the first thing, if you are a board member, as Mr. Driscoll said, is you have a fiduciary duty to the company. Fiduciary duty means that you have to act in a prudent manner. You have certain obligations to comply with the law, and you have the burden of doing that. So if you are a board member, the first thing you want to do is make sure that, number one, as Mr. Driscoll said, you want to identify all of the common property, because you're responsible for taking care and maintaining all of the common property: pool, clubhouse, retention, and detention ponds. The association is responsible for that, and you as a board member are responsible for making sure that the association complies with that rule. So you definitely want to do that. You also want to make sure that you have insurance on all the common area property, clubhouse, tennis courts, whatever it may be. You want to make sure that you have insurance on that. And then more importantly, for you as a board member, you want to make sure that you have E&O insurance, errors and omissions insurance. Sometimes it's called D&O, but it's errors and omissions, E, errors and omissions, for the directors and officers, for the D&O. That's why it's sometimes called D&O insurance. But you want to make sure that you are insured so that anything that happens, they can't come after you and or your house. They go after the association and the association's insurance. So that's the first, those are the first few steps that you want to take. But having a fiduciary duty means that you have to manage the money properly, and you have to be held accountable. You may also want to get a fidelity bond. Fidelity bond will protect your association from any theft by an officer, or alleged theft by an officer. So those are some of the insurance things that you want to get if you're on the board, after you determine what property it is you are supposed to be taking care of. You have to identify all of the common area property, and again, take responsibility for its upkeep and maintenance.
Okay. Yep. And so we're going to have a presentation on insurance at the November 7th virtual HOA boot camp. So we'll dive into depth on that. All right. So I'm going to just read a couple of questions here for the presentation. Can you speak more to how you got rid of the management company and what management looks like after that? What is overseeing the day-to-day? Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you go.
I can speak directly to that. We got rid of the man. First, we asked them for a copy of their agreement. We were, as the new board members, you're entitled to all
the contracts,
unfettered access to all documents. So we asked them for a copy of their contract. Their contract said that we had to give them 90 days notice before we terminated. We gave them that 90 days notice. It was odd, however, because our declaration said that there should only have been 60-day notice. And so I asked them, how did they get 90-day notice when our declaration said that we were only 60-day notice? But we sent them a letter saying that we're terminating your services. We're giving you 90 days pursuant to paragraph 9 of the management agreement between you and the association. We thank you for your service, and we're going in a different direction. we chose to self-manage
Yes.
in an effort to save money. I was an attorney, and so we were able to save, $5,000 to $7,500 a month between the management fees and the attorney's fees that we were paying each month, and that drastically reduced our budget. From what I've found, a lot of these management companies have managers that are, making minimum wage managing your association. And so you as a homeowner have more of a vested interest in making sure that everything runs properly and that you aren't being overcharged, or more importantly than being overcharged, that you're getting a fair and reasonable rate that's consistent with the market where you live, and not necessarily the rate that one of these big companies would charge John Whelan, who's doing 100 subdivisions in 30 states. You just send them a letter terminating the contract, but you need to get a copy of the contract first so that you can make sure that you do the termination properly.
And that's determined by the board of directors, the newly elected board of directors, not an individual homeowner or resident. I just had to insert that. Sorry about that, Marvin.
No problem.
And part of the question was asking what management looked like after that. Who is overseeing the day-to-day of the community needs? So in our scenario, I oversaw the day-to-day operation. I have a technical background, so I set up some systems where we never touch cash. Banking. Many of the banks that these management companies deal with don't want to deal with a self-managed community. The bank that really gave us an opportunity and worked with us was BB&T at that time, now Truist. And I'm just going to put that out there. There's quite a bit of work in there, but we made it work by creating a community help desk. So any calls, any emails that were received, we had it routed to our help desk. It would create a ticket for them. They had multiple ways to do it, by email, visiting the help desk site. It saved us quite a bit of time when working with residents, and each ticket has to be treated uniquely. I mean, we've gotten messages about, don't the HOA have to come and get this owl out my yard, to somebody dog pooped in the yard. You know how it works. And we'll get more into that when me and Brian talk about the difference between code enforcement and HOA, not violations, but enforcement. So we'll get more into that. So hopefully we answered your question. What is the property management company assigned by the builder is not responding to calls or emails to start transition? Gary, thanks for the question. Great question. All I can say is it's really hard to get anything done when the management company, hold them to their contract. Take a look at their contract. If you look in their contract, it speaks to transition. They are obligated to do the transition and train the new board members. Well, we didn't have that because they were upset that we sued the management company, and we ended up having to sue our community to make some changes. They tried to take away, guess what? Our voting rights. So all I'm saying is here, you got to be, you have to be strategic. First thing you want to do is try to have them honor their contract. And I hate to say it, if the relationship is bad, nothing's making them do it unless you want to spend some time in litigation. And I'll just tell you, I don't like litigation. I'm tired of litigation. Anything that I wanted to litigate, I left it alone because of my experience working on the board dealing with litigation, and it's not fun. All right.
Well, the other thing that you can also do is contact the previous board members, because again, as Mr. Driscoll stated, the board can delegate responsibility, but not obligations.
Okay. You're right.
And so that previous board is obligated to transition that information. And so if the new board is not able to get the management company to comply with its contract, not only should you terminate that contract, you should contact the previous board members and have the previous board members contact the management company. And because if the management company doesn't comply, it's those previous board members that are going to be liable, and your association. And so the management companies typically have indemnification agreements so that they can't be sued, or even if they're sued, the association has to cover the cost.
Right. And, you know, we'll have more discussions about that on November 7th. There's a question about, can y'all please address HOAs that refuse to bring all of the books to the annual meeting per GA HOA laws? And I'm not aware of no law. Marvin, you might probably can speak to that for review. Thank you.
I think that at the annual meeting, they're typically required to present an annual budget, and typically, I believe the community gets to vote on that annual budget. Again, you have to look at your specific declaration, because each declaration of protective covenants is different. In the state of Georgia, there are over 2 million Georgians that live in community associations like HOAs and condos. And there are over 10,000 community associations that those people live in, which means that there are over 10,000 sets of rules, one for each association. So you really have to look at your declaration to see what it says.
Exactly. Folks, a lot of your questions can be answered by reviewing the declaration. Again, Commissioner mentioned that, Attorney Marvin Arrington mentioned that earlier. Who's in charge? The board of directors. And so if you have an existing contract with that management company, and we dealt with this, they didn't want to cooperate. They didn't want to give us records, none of that stuff. So we took advantage of an existing litigation to discover those records and have them turn it over. They didn't turn over everything. They turned over a good amount, but they didn't turn over everything. And there were some bad feelings, right? Because the president of the management company, I don't want to say fired, but was demoted and moved into another management company. So there was some hard feelings. That person kept showing up in our litigation. I am going to share the link to a blog that I posted, and it's called titled Open Books and Review. So if you want to see the books, you have to write a letter demanding review of those books. And you know, just whoever requests to open books and review, those are the ones that can review it, or people in their household. And if they have some legal representation, they can review it too. So I am going to share that at some point. I guess we better move forward on these slides. All right, we've spoken to governance. Who's in charge? The board of directors. They are in charge of managing and operating your community and dealing with all of the business of your community. And that includes the common properties, that include your financial state, the whole thing. That's why when you elect these people, take it as serious as you take an election of your council people, your mayor, the senators, the representatives at both the state and federal level, including the president. You all have to vet these people. And I don't like the process of election where people just come in, show up, give their spiel. We haven't had time to vet these people. So as a part of our election process, we sent out a request for people who want to run. If they had a message that they wanted to post to the community, we posted it. That gives you as residents some time to look into them. But again, when you elect these board of director members, and then the board of director members elect their officers, you now have people who represent your interests. So as a community resident, it's not that you're powerless. It's the same thing. You got to vote these people off if they're not doing what you want, right? And you don't need a reason to not want to vote for them a second term. I mean, I served. I had a few homes that wasn't happy with me. They did everything they could, tried to discredit me because I had a good record with majority of the residents in the community. We made sure we allowed proxies based on how our declaration specified it, so that people who couldn't make it to the meeting, because if you think about it, the way they try to keep control is to invite less people to those meetings, or they know people won't show up, but people will cast their vote by proxy. So why wouldn't the board of directors not use a proxy to ensure that everybody can vote? I'm very suspicious of that. So I'm experiencing that now in my community, right? They'll send out, oh, we're gonna have an annual meeting, but they don't send out proxies with them. But if you read our declaration, it speaks to proxy usage. And so I'm not going to say that that's the standard, but your answer is in your declaration. Please review your declaration. Seek legal advice if you don't understand something from those declarations. So remember, when we talk about transition, it's a gradual process. The sooner the better, but I'm not surprised based on our more recent experience where people don't know until the last minute that they're voting for homeowner elected board members. And so many of those folks don't have the time to get up to speed. And if they're not into continuing education or improving their craft, you're going to be at an advantage for a long time. I think where I feel short as a member of the board, and I over communicate, is that I didn't communicate effectively. Or when someone made claims, I ignored them sometimes. But these are things that you have to perfect as not only homeowners. Don't go after your fellow homeowners serving on the board with a negative intention. Try to work it out, because guess what? If the litigation is too high, right? And I did post on our Communities United group about an HOA that lost $20 million in a lawsuit. And it left every resident with $80,000 debt. Every home, maybe I should say home, to pay off that lawsuit, because most HOAs or community associations take, I'll say it, the cheap route to buy the insurance. You got to think about it. If they're not taking care of the maintenance and they're going cheap on the insurance, that's going to be a negative impact on you as a homeowner. So try to work together. One thing I can say that management companies specialize in is divide and conquer. They love to create, I'll say, drama in your community. And all they have to do is the ones they're cozy with, make a certain statement, have them communicate it, and it's going to create that separation of your neighbors. And it's costly. And hopefully you all are listening to me on that. All right, so in some states, there's some legislative requirements for the transition. Some are more complete than others. I think, and Attorney Arrington can speak to it, but Fulton County made an attempt to fill some of those gaps. Do you want to speak to that, Marvin?
Okay, yes, Fulton County actually, when Mayor Edwards was county commissioner, passed a what is called a turnover ordinance. And it basically says that before the declarant can turn over the board or the control of the community to the homeowners, they must bring all common areas up to code. So for example, the pool, clubhouse, tennis courts, golf court,
Drainage system.
walking trail, security system, any of those things that you have must be brought up to code. So that means that the exit lights must be working, the electricity must be functioning properly. And so It is a great ordinance, and you know, it works well. And I'm pretty sure that the city of South Fulton adopted it, because I think they adopted all of the city, all of the county ordinances when they first.
Okay, it looked like you kind of went mute.
That same should be available in the city of South Fulton. That same ordinance.
Well, I went and checked, Marvin. They did adopt a lot of the Muni Code from, or I'll say policies from Fulton County. And I did a search using subdivision requirements. I did see a discussion was had, but I don't know that I see subdivision requirements there. So I went back to Fulton County and I was able to surface the details of that, and I'll share those documents. But this is something that will help residents overcome some of the shortcomings of those developers, which caused them to file bankruptcy for the association. The biggest expense that I've seen, and that included our community, was the retention detention pond and the overall drainage system. But you were successful with getting them to address that at their costs, and that may be due to the subdivision requirements. So you can speak to that experience. They're having a discussion with the builder or declarant, right? Because this was a part of the discussion before we would complete a transition.
So as we were transitioning, as the board members, we went out and got an estimate on our retention and detention ponds. We determined, we got an estimate back of over $75,000 to $100,000 to clean out our retention and detention ponds, because they had not been maintained in over 15 years by the declarant. Mr. Driscoll called code enforcement. Code enforcement came out, gave us a citation, and then we were able to use, or I was able to use that citation to negotiate with John Whelan's lawyer, not only to have them cover the cost, but they found a vendor that would do it at $25,000. And so they covered that cost so that we didn't have to cover it at all. So that was a great win for our community.
Exactly. And, you know, we'll get more into that, right, Ryan, when we talk about HOA enforcement as opposed as code enforcement. You got to know the difference. All right, so we're going to just go ahead and we'll conclude on the record section, if you're okay with that, Marvin. So as typical aspect of transition are making sure you get the records. And generally that is outsourced to the management company. Again, as a board, we decided to transition directly with the management company. So if we considered hiring a management company, we would know how to transition to them. So we didn't want to stay ignorant to the process. And this is part of the education. You got to make some sacrifice and get up to speed. But that includes the article of incorporation, your declaration of protective covenants, your bylaws, and any other rules and regulations that the appointed board of directors may have derived. And of course, you want your financial records, all the budgets, preferably from the time the community was established as a nonprofit and they established their plat. Most of these documents are recorded to the plat, and you can get access to those by going to the clerk's office, or there's an online website, and I'll let Marvin tell you about that because I can't commit to my memory what that website was.
Well, so just briefly, the articles of incorporation should be available at the Georgia Secretary of State website, sos.ga.gov, and a copy of your declaration of protective covenants, as well as your plat, should be on file with the clerk's office. If you're in the city of South Fulton, that'll be the Fulton County Superior Court Clerk. And there's a website, gscca.org, and I'll put that in the chat so that everyone can see it. It's the Georgia It's a Georgia Superior Court Clerks Cooperative Authority, gscca.org. You can go on there, and it has all of the records, the land records, deed and title records from every county in the state of Georgia.
All right, thank you. All right, so again, we're concluding in this section. Just remember, the expectation is transition to be a gradual process. If you're aspiring to become a board member of your community, or you just want to be in the know, take a look at those documents that we've mentioned to understand your community and participate in the transition so you can understand how it works. Like say, for example, remember I talked about those detention retention ponds. We had a beaver build a dam in ours. And so one of the code enforcement guys, and I can't think of his name right now, he passed, but he came out and he gave me a tour of the drainage system, and we had a discussion about the retention and detention pond. And believe me, it was eye-opening, but I felt empowered to represent our community. And, you know, I was able to sit through a discussion with Marvin and old declarant. So just remember that those learning experiences, I mean, I've documented those things. That's how we were able to, you know, create the HOA handbook. And I look forward to updating the HOA handbook and HOA, God, I can't even think of the second book, but it focuses on bids, et cetera. And, you know, this is to empower our neighbors. And again, we went through some learning experiences around pricing because we use those monies to do things like this. And we plan to push some legislation, do some advocacy. So we're going to be asking you at the end of this session to join us as we push these legislations to protect our communities. And I think this is a good place to stop. But again, join us, become a member, and let's go after our dream of peace and happiness. Okay? All right, so based on the agenda, we're going to move to the topic code enforcement versus HOA enforcement. Brian, are you ready? Wait till Brian get on here, and I'll go ahead and change.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Good morning, all.
I'm going to go ahead and just show the agenda real quick so that we can have an intelligent discussion. I want everyone to know what we're trying to focus on. We're going to drive this discussion using the PowerPoint presentation from Brian, so we can also put that into the records and set it up as a handout. So can you all see my Word document? Brian, can you see it? Code enforcement versus HOA enforcement. So
yes,
we're going
sir,
to talk about, okay, we're going to talk about HOA rules. We're going to talk about rentals, ownership, some of those challenges. We're going to talk about briefly about the covenants. Marvin covered that pretty extensively in our last discussion. Then we're going to talk about enforcement of ordinances as well as enforcement of covenants. Airbnb keeps coming up. So we'll talk about code enforcement for Airbnb and discuss it as an HOA violation, depending on how your governing documents are structured. And then of course, code enforcement versus police enforcement. So we plan to cover those topics as a part of this presentation. So let's go ahead and get that presentation started. I got it open. All right, so let's kick it off. All right, do you see the code enforcement 2020 and beyond, Brian? Is that okay?
No, I'm still seeing the agenda.
Oh, you are? Oh,
Yes, sir.
okay. Thought I shared it. Man, I tell you, as technically as I am, you would think I get it right the first time. All right, let's do it
Brian,
one more
if you
time.
will, please introduce yourself and let us know. There was a question, are you with the city of South Fulton?
Okay, absolutely, Attorney Arrington. First of all, I want to thank you, Attorney Arrington and Mr. Driscoll, for inviting me out, as well as council. It's a great opportunity to I welcome any chance to talk about code enforcement. I'm passionate about it. I am the code enforcement administrator for the city of South Fulton. Just actually made a year earlier this month. Prior to that, I was in the city of Fairburn for a little over 7 years. Had a lot of training, a lot of experience, and I've dealt with a lot in both jurisdictions. And I'm a lifelong resident of the city of South Fulton as well. Currently live here now, so it's definitely a great and a couple of different reasons for on this call. I'm learning a lot as I live in an HOA in the city of South Fulton, so I'm learning quite a bit myself. And it's a great opportunity just to talk about what we do, what we don't do, and it just helps streamline all of the processes. So again, I'm thankful for the opportunity to talk and listen and learn, and hopefully we can share some ideas and come away with a great understanding today.
Sir. So I have up here why code enforcement is important. Brian,
Okay,
you can answer that one.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, if you ask me, I would say that, I truly am passionate about what we do, and I think it serves a great purpose. And I'll just try to answer these briefly. I don't want to send you guys to death by PowerPoint. But why we're important, I think, as far as the mayor talked earlier about economic development. And the foundation of any city, I think, is public safety first. The mayor is absolutely correct in that. So after you lock up the bad guys and you're able to put the fires out, people are secure in their safety. I think the next point, people start to look for comfort and aesthetic value. And that's where code enforcement plays a big part as far as keeping property values up, keeping the aesthetics of the property, making the place where people want to live, who want to invest. And that's the part that we try to play within the city.
And if I can add, Brian, that is the overall responsibility of the board of directors, is to ensure we maintain and improve property values. That's our number one responsibility. Well, when I was on the board.
Absolutely.
So what is a code enforcement officer?
Well, a code enforcement officer wears many, many hats. So we are, in many ways, we are the concierge of the city. We act as a go-between between public works, between fire, police, business licenses, just about every department. I think we're unique in the standpoint that we touch every single department within the city, because most complaints either come through us because people mistakenly believe they belong to us, or we just work in conjunction with these other departments. So along with those internal duties that we have, we also are, when we're doing enforcement, we are the enforcement agent. We are sometimes the counselor as we're dealing with life situations, divorces, deaths in the family, medical illnesses. We hear it all. So we wear lots of different hats in order to get to the ultimate goal of compliance.
But Brian, I noticed you all don't carry weapons. Safety, from a safety perspective, how's that working out for code enforcement officers?
Yes, sir, that's a great question. And that is something that we are, different jurisdictions have different philosophies on that. We are in dangerous situations, and that is a concern of many of our officers. We've had a recent murder of a code enforcement officer in Augusta. We've had several incidents just happened recently. We've actually had an officer, when I first got here in September, we had an officer that found two warm bodies that had just been, two murders that had just taken place minutes before he got there. Wow. And he just happened upon that scene just doing a routine inspection. We've had an officer that's gotten shot on duty that still works with us to this day. So it is a concern with us, and it's something that we try to use our tools that we have to de-escalate and to try to avoid those situations. But it is something that we deal with on a daily basis, and we're aware of on a daily basis.
Do you all wear body cams at all?
We have just had them issued. We've gone through some training, but we haven't implemented them yet. That should be on the way shortly. So within, I would say within the next month or so, we will have the body cams active and operable.
Well, I apologize for my ignorance. I just never thought that a code enforcement officer would have to deal with that type of life, if I may.
Yes, sir. Well, that's a great question because and the reason why is because a lot of times people, the officer is going on to somebody's private property. And the response that we get in many cases is that, why are you on my property? I can do what I want to do because it's my property. I pay taxes here. I pay the mortgage. You can't tell me what to do. So, it's a very, you're putting somebody in a very defensive posture. So a lot of people will take that and take great offense to us entering their personal space and telling them what they can and can't do.
Wow. And we get the same feedback in an HOA community trying to enforce restrictions. And so that, I've noticed that we have a few areas where we cross paths, but, if you live in a formal HOA community, I recommend taking a two-prong approach. If it looked like something that's violating ordinance for the city, call code enforcement and just make the HOA community aware, because we have tools available to us based on the contract with the plat. And if they live on the plat, we have a way to enforce, but nothing close to what code enforcement can do. All right, you've already spoken to that part. All right, what about this work philosophy? I think you tried to allude to it.
Yes, we touched on that briefly. We're a mix between enforcement, but our ultimate goal is compliance. So our overall mission is to get compliance, through our different tools, and one of them being citation. But before that is forums such as this, which deals with education and just putting out our ordinances, letting people know what we do. And I think that's the carrot, and then we have the stick that comes with the citation that comes when we don't get that voluntary compliance. Then we have to come with something a little bit more strong for those that don't comply.
Right. So that's a legal process, right?
That is a legal process, yes, sir. So what we do is depending on the severity of the violation. If it's something that is relatively minor, tall grass, junk vehicles. When I say minor, I'm talking about health and safety related. So,
okay.
Versus something that's a health hazard, which I would consider, dilapidated structure, burnout, abandoned building. That's something that's definitely something that's high on the radar.
Right.
But typically our violations get about a week to comply. 5 business days to cut your grass, remove the junk vehicle, get the car off the lawn, et cetera, et cetera. And as long as that's done within that time period, then we close the case, and hopefully we've educated that citizen so we don't have to come back to that particular address, and we move on to the next violations. If they don't comply, then of course we'll escalate our enforcement to citation, whether that's a municipal court or our code board process.
Yep. So opposite or in alignment with code enforcement, most community associations have restrictions on grass height, some of those things. And so the HOA tools are to give them a warning. They have 10 days to comply. The second letter, if they comply, if they don't comply, we give them like a renewal or reminder to comply. And then I think we have to give them another 10 days. And then after that, the third letter would mention fines. And then of course, ultimately no compliance, then we have the ability to fine. And many of the community's declaration mention the fine amount, but then there are some legal aspects of that. We may have to have Attorney Marvin Arrington speak to that. But our way of encouraging compliance is to just ask, and then no compliance, then it's a daily cost. And I think in my community, it's $50 a day. So that money adds up. If we get to $2,000, then we can ultimately foreclose on their home, which is something that I never supported. I don't think that uneducated or untrained board of directors who is not accountable to anybody outside of the homeowners and residents should be able to take someone's home, but that's afforded us in our contract with all of the homeowners. So just wanted to make sure I sort of identify the difference. But we do have some teeth, but some people, they'll just ignore it. If they're not moving, they don't care. But being able to foreclose on their home is one of the options that some board of director members don't care about doing. They will do it. And the attorneys that represent the communities, they'll go right after that money and slap some huge fees on top of the litigation. So that's our legal aspect, which is, I like yours better.
Right. It's a little bit less
Yes.
extreme in our case. We can, I think that middle ground is key because you guys have a longer process and a more, a softer approach, I would say, if it's 10 days warning and then an additional warning, whereas our approach is, hey, we're gonna tell you one time, and if you're having some hardships, some life situations, we can work with you. But if it's habitual, then we're going straight to a citation at that point.
Well, from our perspective, we have to be consistent. So we can't pick and choose who we apply it to, right? You have to do
likewise.
And we have to do it evenly across the board.
Yes, sir. That's key for credibility. For credibility purposes, we operate with the same philosophy. We have to be consistent. If we give an extension, if we give leniency, it's always done through a process, a vetting process. We want to make sure that the reason is legitimate. So we're not just picking and choosing who we're lenient with and who we're helping, who we're not. We try to treat it all the same. That's the only way we'll have credibility. If not, then we're going to be accused of favoritism and all kinds of different accusations. So we have to be consistent and
I'm glad to hear that.
How we enforce it. Yes, sir.
I just learned a lot more sitting here listening to you speak about this. All right, so this is yours.
Okay, so this is a question that we like to ask to engage with our residents, our internal and external customers. I think we're on the slide. We're asking the question, how do you see code enforcement and what type of code enforcement do you want to see for your community? And the reason why that's important is because it deals with the issue of, are we looking for a punitive, go get them code enforcement team that, we're bringing folks into court very quickly and aggressively, or are we looking for more of an educational first code enforcement team, a kinder, gentler code enforcement team? And sometimes it waffles depending on jurisdictions, depends on the neighborhoods. It goes back and forth. And sometimes we're caught in that pendulum of, hey, we're being too harsh because we're getting complaints of high fines or rapid action. And sometimes the pendulum swings the other way and people will say, well, hey, they're not being tough enough. So we kind of go back and forth on that pendulum, on that continuum from harsh to educational. So what we find is just we kind of meet in the middle. We're definitely, we don't want to see the same violations over and over again. So we want to be strict, we want to be fair, but we also want to be understanding. Sometimes it's a tightrope between those two extremes. So we like to engage with the public, internal and external customers, to find out what type of code enforcement vision they want to see. And then we want to carry out that vision in the best way that we can.
Yes, sir. And I can assume, similar to HOAs, you get pulled into a lot of disputes between neighbors, and they're intended on hurting one another using code enforcement or the community association. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh, very, very, very much so. We have the Hatfield and McCoy scenario that we get involved in to solve a dispute, whether it's a property line dispute or whether it's any other personal matter. Yes, we do often get used as a weapon by one party or both, and we get caught in the middle quite a bit. Absolutely.
Yes, sir. Yep. And so that's not a reasonable expectation. We have to follow a process. We have to make sure that process is well documented with each experience. And in our case, we have to make a decision as a collective, unless we delegate that aspect to a committee. And from your perspective, I suspect that the city is delegating that to its code enforcement officers. Is that a good assessment?
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
Right. And so on this slide here, are you asking for people to send you suggestions in
Yes, sir. Well,
reference?
it's a rhetorical question, but it's also I do want that engagement. I would like some actual answers, but it's a rhetorical question as well. It's to just something to think about. What type of department or division do we want to see? And we're happy to take some suggestions on what we can do. And I think that's covered in a couple of the next slides. It's just giving some concrete examples of some things you would like to see and things you feel that you're not, some services you feel like you may not be getting. And let's have that conversation.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and this is a powerful slide, following slide. So this is where you will involve our council members as well as the mayor, right? Based on feedback, you'll engage them so that this would actually be is this a policy change or is this a process change or a combination of both?
It could be a combination of both. So the question is, what are some communities that you believe have a solid code enforcement operation that our city can aspire to emulate? And the reason why this is critical, Mr. Driscoll, this is very critical, is because we often get the charge, and I'm sure everybody is in public office or serving in public capacity hears that. This wouldn't happen in pick a city, Buckhead, Brookhaven, Milton. It wouldn't happen there. And in some cases, I get that concerns. I'm a lifelong South Side, South Fulton resident, so I get that. But what I challenge people to name a city with a code enforcement department that you would like to emulate, because if we talk about Atlanta, many times people will say, well, hey, look at Buckhead, but we don't want to talk about Bankhead. You know, so you have to look at the whole city. We have to talk about Bankhead and the Bluff as well as Buckhead. Right. So I would imagine there are not too many communities. If you really put your thinking cap on and say, well, what community do we want to see emulate that does it right? You have to factor in the socioeconomic, individual characteristics of those communities to figure out, well, it's not necessarily that the code enforcement in Buckhead is just an awesome team. It's the fact that the socioeconomic factors lead those residents to do a better job and have more pride and more ownership in their community.
Right.
So it's not necessarily reflective of the code enforcement department when you see a great city. So just kind of setting expectations of what we can expect as far as compliance from the code enforcement division. Can you expect them to monitor a impoverished area or lower income area and expect 100% compliance? I would argue that would be a tough case to make. Right,
because it's not your goal to put citizens of the city of South Fulton into financial hardship or anything. You just want them to just comply to the ordinances, correct?
That is correct. That is correct.
Right.
But that may be providing resources. That may be
right.
helping provide resources and opportunities to help them comply.
How many code enforcement officers do you all have for the city of South Fulton to date?
Okay, yeah, great question. So we're staffed fully at a total of 15, including myself. So I'm the administrator. We have 2 supervisors that work under me. Each supervisor has a team of 6 individual officers, as well as an admin person. So we have a total of 15 field officers. We have a couple of admins, and we have our own court division that handles our 100+ court cases that we process every month. Okay,
man, that's the volume. 100, man, that's a full-time job.
Oh yes, it is. Yes, it is.
How Patricia Newman-Neal asks, how can a community enforce no parking rules in HOA communities since it's not a enforcement issue?
Yeah, that's a big one.
That is a huge issue.
Go both ways sometimes. If you don't have private streets, you almost have to rely on code enforcement.
Or in police.
That's a key distinction. So I'm glad that's a great question. I'm happy we're talking about that, and that's the reason why Mr. Driscoll asked you to put that code versus police in there, because that's a big part of our education package, is that code enforcement does not enforce or cannot enforce anything that's in the public area. So whether that's the public right of way, which is the 10 feet behind the curb, it's your sidewalk area where, you know, how your cable company can come and dig up your front yard without your permission or consent. You know, if you wonder who's this guy doing out here running cable in my front yard, well, that's because that's not your front yard. That's public property. The same thing with the public streets. Somebody can park right in front of my driveway, not my driveway, but in front of my front door, as long as they're not blocking my ingress and egress. And I don't like it because he's parked in front of my house. But technically that street is a public street and there's nothing I can do about it unless he's breaking some other law, which would be a parking law enforced by the police department. So code enforcement wouldn't get involved in any type of public violation. That would automatically transfer to public works in the case of illegal dumping, or it would transfer to police in the case of parking commercial vehicles or anything like that.
Well, just based on my experience, I used to call them both, because some residents would get very smart, you know, like driving a truck into the community. They will back the truck onto their property, which we know is a code violation. Sometimes it's just a cab, sometimes it's the entire truck, or they'll park on the street. And so as a resident or member of a community, you have to make sure you know who to call, because time is essential, and the city has to allocate their resources appropriately. In some instances, I had to ask code enforcement to come through the community on the weekends, because then that's when they will wait to do their violations. So I'm glad that we're speaking to that. And I'll, you know, just so we can talk about, who are your customers as code enforcement?
Wow. So our customers range, they run the gamut. We have our internal customers. Like I say, we deal with every single department within the city. We're the concierge, as I say, of almost every type of complaint, whether it's permits, buildings, zoning, engineering. So we have knowledge of just about every single operation because they come through us and we're involved in some kind of way. Those are our internal customers. Our external customers, of course, are the residents that we service, the business owners of the community we deal with every single day. And of course, our elected officials and our leadership. Those are some more of our internal customers that we answer to, that we work in conjunction with. So we serve many different functions and in many different capacities.
I'll say I didn't realize you all dealt with daily complaints through ClickFix. And I've used it based on something I saw on the road, Enon Road. And then I was brought into the know of other complaints using that application. How's that working out for code enforcement?
Mr. Driscoll, that's a great tool that we, you know, it helps us tremendously to one, track our complaints, helps me to manage the officer's ability to handle those complaints. And it's great for the citizens, those that can use it from the app, or, you know, for those who are more old fashioned, they want to pick up a phone and call that center. It's 24/7. So I tell people you can call on New Year's Eve at 11:59 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and someone will pick up and take that complaint and route that to the right department. Well, we want it. I would rather that. We would rather that than to wait that Monday morning and the complaints are piled up, because we may have somebody working that weekend.
Okay.
Maybe something that we can get to, and at least it'll come to my smartphone, to my tablet, and I can acknowledge it. I can respond back to it if I happen to see it over that period of time. And that's one of the accomplishments that I'm most proud of, that I can pat myself on the back just a little bit for coming in and knocking our response time down from closing the case from 17 days all the way down to about 3.5 days since my tenure here. And that's just a product of us taking customer service very, very seriously and making sure that we're responsive in our approach, that we're having our business.
Well, I know.
Okay, we got another question.
Okay, go ahead.
We got another question. Code enforcement does not enforce HOA rules, which I understand, but there's a fine line
For example, if someone chooses to raise a chicken on their property, which is against the HOA rules and guidelines, but also the city guidelines state that they can, how should this be handled?
Two-prong approach.
Excellent question. Excellent question. And so I've jotted some notes down as you guys were talking earlier. And
Okay. So I'm about to mute everybody.
I'm still
Hold on
trying
a
to
second,
decompress
everybody.
from all the mess this week.
Oh,
This
I mean,
has
we
been the
really in
worst.
it.
I've been decompressed since
Oh,
2016. I mean, I've been like this since then. So, but it's
HOA, we cannot, let me change my language. We cannot enforce HOA rules and covenants. As Attorney Arrington said earlier, I took note, there are 10,000 plus different HOA bodies, entities within the state of Georgia. Those are 10,000 plus different rules, covenants, and restrictions. South Fulton, I'm not sure how many we have quite a few. The reason why we don't enforce that one is because everything we enforce has to go through mayor and council. We cannot enforce anything that's not already approved and go through our legal process and voted on by mayor and council. If we were to enforce HOA restrictions, we would have 100 plus different covenants that we would be knowledgeable of and responsible for. So one neighborhood we would enforce this way. The next neighborhood across the street, we would enforce a different rule in a different way. That goes back to our consistency. We would lose that consistency that we would need in order to do our job. So how do we approach something that's against the HOA, but it's not against city ordinances? We just inform the resident of what our enforcement powers are according to our municipal codes. If it's not against it, then we have to just make them aware of what our powers and what our limitations are.
Okay, I think we may have done this one earlier, but if a community has clearly marked no parking signage and yet people continue to park there, is this a code violation or a police matter?
Yeah, that would be a police matter.
right. And it's important for people to understand the difference. Marvin, I think you had another question you were gonna run?
Yes, Kimberly Brown Payne, would code enforcement be willing to attend community meetings to further the education within subdivisions? If so, do we direct those requests to you, Mr. Morris?
Okay, yes, ma'am, absolutely. We try to attend everyone that we can. Hopefully we can get 2 weeks, 3 weeks notice if possible, but if not possible, we'll make every effort to attend every single one that we are invited to.
Okay,
and
another
yes,
question.
You can direct that to me, yes, ma'am.
Another question from KB, does the city of South Fulton allow roosters on a homeowner's property?
Depending on the type of property, right?
Right. Depends on the zoning. I think we mentioned earlier that we brought over Fulton County's codes, majority of them. And we're in the process of doing a zoning rewrite at this time that will address some of those issues. But as it stands now, in most zoning areas, chickens and or roosters are allowed. Now, the caveat to that is that if a rooster is making a disturbance, is a nuisance to the surrounding areas, that can be handled with a noise complaint, which will be handled through the police department as well.
Wow. So I can see why it's complex for the residents. So can we center the discussion around the most active areas of concerns that code enforcement see? Blight properties.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So 80-20 rule, 80% of our complaints come from 20% of our properties. Most of these are blighted properties, the ones that you pass by have been sitting for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. We currently, shout out to council for giving us the opportunity. We got some funds that were allocated to correct some of these issues. We appreciate that very much. COVID roadblocked quite a bit of that. We were just allocated in February, and COVID hit in March. So that slowed down the legal process of accessing those funds to be able to take care of these properties that have been sitting. So these are unique properties that, in many cases, the owner it's a life issue. The owner has died. There are no heirs to the property, and therefore there's no one to hold accountable. So we'll get complaint after complaint, and I understand them that you guys aren't doing anything about it. You've ridden by this property 20 times. What is being done? I understand it, and I fully get it. But I like to walk through the process and say, okay, if this is a person that has died, which is the case in many of these instances, who do you hold accountable? Who do you take to court? And once we walk down that path, that's where we see where the process really stops for you and it stops for us, because there is no accountability. The only accountability is the process that we have now put in place, thanks to council and thanks to legal and our director, Ms. Reeves, is to put that in place in order to free up funds that we can remediate these issues. We can actually go onto the property, which takes a legal order for us to even enter the property. And we can remediate those violations. We can work on demolition. We can work on taking that property and returning it to a useful value to the community. But that is a process. So that's one of our biggest challenges, are the blighted properties that are in our neighborhood. That's the most severe by far. That's health and safety all day.
So do the city take ownership of the property?
He's worried about the rooster because he said it's waking everybody up in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so that's a nuisance.
That's a nuisance problem. Yeah. So the noise complaints are, and usually those happen late at night. So that's why I think the ordinance is written the way it is, where that is enforced by the police department, so they can come out. If it's 1 o'clock, 12 o'clock, that's something that the PD will respond to and be able to write citations and take it on from there.
But we have to be cognizant of their priorities, right? So they may not show up quick enough for some people.
Mr. Morris, Tracy Matthews asked, can you share your contact information so they can invite you to their HOA meeting?
Absolutely. My email address is probably the best way to contact me, and that is Brian, BRIAN .Morris, MORRIS at City of South Fulton, GA.gov.
And you can send it in the chat too if you want to, Brian, to all attendees.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah. So once you,
if you don't mind, I will do that as soon as we get as soon as we wrap up. I'll make sure to put that in there.
We got two last questions. What type of violations do you look for? And it really is, I guess it's one and the same. Are you called for specific situations, or do y'all just do drive-through?
Excellent question. So this is another great opportunity for us to 95% of all code enforcement departments are reactive only. I think the mayor said it well earlier this morning, is that we can put a car in every driveway, and that could be done, but it's going to cost some money to do it. And it's similar to code enforcement. So we have a large area, 5th largest city, I believe, in the state of Georgia, large area to cover. It's unorthodox the way it's cut because we got the remnants of Fulton County. So our 12 officers are split into those different zones. So we are reactive. We react on calls, which is how 95% of code enforcement is done. We are proactive. We're trying to gear toward maybe 40%, 40% proactive. So when we go out to a call, we'll look around and we'll try to get everything that's in that area. If we see things that are egregious, tell my officers to go ahead and put that into the system. Let's build a case. But so we depend on, for the other 60%, we depend on concerned citizens and people driving by to use, like I say, See-Click Fix is a great app. And I'll put that in the chat as well, the number and the app. That's a great app because if you have it on your phone, if you're tech savvy, you can take a picture and within 30 seconds, it goes to that officer that's in that zone. You can track the progress of that complaint and we'll be able to jump on that quickly. So we depend on, short answer is we depend on residents for 60% of our work. And we try to field generate. While we're out, we try to field generate as much as we can, but it's a lot to do in order to really get to that point of being fully proactive.
We appreciate the investment. Trust me.
Absolutely.
All right. So for what I see here in your most active areas, there's some overlap. Blighted properties, parking on grass, high grass, trash and debris. We have those tools to enforce, but again, we have to go through a process and we have to stick through that process as a community association. Otherwise, it puts us in jeopardy for some litigation. And I'm just going to go back here.
So
Here.
Correll, we're at 12 o'clock, so I know we got the presentation from Representative Bodie. I think we've taken all of the questions. I don't know if there's anything else that Mr. Morris wants to highlight, but we need to be mindful of people's time also.
Yes, sir. So if people are okay with the next 15 minutes, I can play the video, or they can go ahead and sign off. I'll play the video so it'll be in the recording. Good. All right.
Welcome, everybody, to the 4th annual HOA Boot Camp here in
Let me pause this thing. Get it into the record. All right, so I'm about to share it, and then we'll go ahead and get it into the record. Or recording. I sound too official. It doesn't like the app. All right, just taking me a little second here. Let me clean up. Okay. All right, so we'll just forego the video for now. I can't get it started. All right, so this will be our conclusion of the South Fulton HOA Boot Camp. I know we only had this scheduled for 2 hours. We'll test and find out what people would like to do moving forward. Maybe next time we do it too.
Let's talk a moment before we wrap up, as part of the wrap up, about our legislative efforts. We had the transition ordinance from Fulton County. It makes sense in Fulton, but guess what? It also makes sense in Douglas and Cobb and all around the state of Georgia. And so we're working with Representative Bodie, Representative Roger Bruce, Senator John Zella James, and others. We work to file the Georgia Community Association Transparency and Protection Act as a method to protect homeowners. So we need you all to reach out to your legislators, make sure that they know that they support this. We're going to have to push it real hard because the builders are fighting back against it, but it only makes sense that boards should turn over the records from one board to another. It's just simple transparency. So hopefully we can get your support on that. Hopefully you'll look at getting a membership with the Georgia HOA Alliance. And please join us on November, I believe it's November 7th, for our Georgia HOA Boot Camp. We've done one in Fulton, DeKalb, Clayton. We have Cobb next week. So we invite you to join us for the Georgia HOA Boot Camp, where we'll go more in detail on other specific areas involving HOAs. Let me say this. If you are new to a board, one of the first things you want to do is to get a reserve study. A reserve study, okay? The reserve study will assess all of your property, and it'll give you a 20-year maintenance and replacement plan for all of the association property. So please make sure you get a reserve study. Please make sure you have E&O and D&O insurance to protect yourselves as board members. And thank you again, everyone, for attending today.
Right, and if I may make a final statement, please take time to read your declarations. Not only reading the declaration, but read the restriction component of the declaration to make sure you understand what rules you are obligated to follow. You know, I've seen litigation over hanging the American flag, litigation over, you know, asking for email, et cetera. The list goes on. You will be empowered by reviewing the declaration, reviewing those restrictions, so when you speak to an attorney, you can actually add some value. And that's my final take. Thank you all for joining us. We'll make that recording available, which is an interview between Commissioner Kelly Robinson of Douglas County and Representative William Bodie. Awesome discussion. Want to make sure you all review it. We will post it in the HOA Communities United, HOA Alliance Community Alliance Group. It's a great discussion. You get your Facebook group, sorry. And you'll have some insight in some of the policies that we want to push to protect the interests of all homeowners in these community associations. And again, I'm speaking from experience as a board member, as a resident. Everyone won't like what you do, but as long as you focus on your fiduciary duty to protect the community association, maintain those property values, do what you have to do to make sure everyone is enjoying the community. Signing off. Any of our council people want to make a statement? This is a great time.
No, this is Councilwoman Gumbs. I just wanted to share that this was very informative. And again, I do thank you all for bringing this to the residents, and then also to learning what the rights were. I learned a lot today. And I think we have a dynamic code enforcement administrator, and you will definitely see a lot of changes. So please use him as a resource as well. But thank you again for doing this. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you, Councilwoman Gumbs. Any other council people? I know they've been busy all morning while working with this, and I'm very, I'm happy to work with each and every council person, the mayor. I think we're going to be off to a great start with the South Fulton HOA Alliance chapter. Anyone wants to participate, take a lead role, please reach out to us. We'll share our contact information. This is a way to not only grow as residents of a community, but we can push policy collectively. That's the only way they're going to listen to us. We're up against what they call these folks, lobbyists. We're up against builders and other contractors. And of course, they're contributing to these campaigns, but we have to vote. We have to come together and work with our representatives, like Representative William Bodie, Representative Roger Bruce, Senator Donzella. We have to protect our own interests. All I know is I want to be happy in my home. I'm not quite sure everybody feel the same way. So again, all council people, mayor, thank you all for joining, and we can push forward. Thank you. Let's hear someone else join. All right, so we're signing off. I will go ahead and end the meeting. Again, thank you all for joining us.